Okay, well, good morning, everybody. How you doing today? You'll note this is my son Miles. The spring break this week, so he's hanging out with me today. Yep. So we can all be very patient. Say hello to everybody, Miles.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So, what did we talk about last time?
Why?
Anyone? What did we talk about?
It was yesterday.
Signaling. And other things, right? And so what was the key idea behind signaling? Well, we did it in the context of education. Yeah.
Double decker. No.
Okay.
It's the idea of
Camel.
it basically sends a message.
That's
Particularly when
what
you're
I
talking about skill.
Uh-huh.
So like certain things we send a message about the level of skill or qualification, such as like your major.
Yep.
That,
Yeah, that's the human capital. Right?
oh yeah, the human.
So, yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Good and bad signals.
Oh, yeah, there are good and bad signals. What would be the distinction?
I guess like having a college degree would be like a good signal to show that like you're capable of doing things.
Exactly. What would be a bad signal? Yeah. Yeah, right. And remember, we talked about, in fact, speaking of which, because you wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, you might put in, I was here, but then I stopped, your resume. But another thing we discussed is, remember when we talked about unemployment. The longer you are unemployed,
Don't kill me.
the harder it
No.
is to get a job. The reason why? Signaling. Right? If you have these gaps in your resume, that says something about you that's not good. You're sending something, you're sending a message. That's like, I don't know, maybe you were in prison, maybe you were just trying to get a job and no one likes you because you're a weirdo, right? And that doesn't convey itself on the resume. So, yeah, absolutely. Signals can be good or bad. But generally speaking, it's worthwhile emphasizing the distinction between a signal and human capital. Human capital makes the person more skilled. It improves the person. It adds to them. It makes them better. Signaling, the person was already great. They can now just show it. I was always smart and conscientious and able to follow instructions. But now I have the proof. So it doesn't add anything, it's just showing off. Does everyone see that distinction? It's a subtle distinction, right? Okay. And then we get into like
It's a lot of
signaling is relative, while human capital is additive, and so forth. Now I bring up that particular point in this class, even though it's more of a micro idea. For one, I know that most people only take one econ course, if they take even one econ course, and that's typically this one. How many of you, by the way, are here for Gen Ed? Some people are just interested in Gen Ed, right? Okay, we have a couple. In my 9 a.m. class, it was like half. I get a lot more people only interested in Gen Ed in the spring semester. I know that most of you will only maybe take this one course, or some of you at least, and so I want to make sure I get some of these lessons in. Like personal finance, it's macro-y, but it's also micro-y. Signaling is kind of micro-y, but it's helpful to put it in because it's a really valuable lesson. I bring it in, I put it in where I put it in, because what we were about to cover, as mentioned, is going to be mostly signaling. Right? It is not something that you will encounter in your workplace unless you like work for the Federal Reserve, or you are maybe in some consulting, or if you teach economics. But it's generally just a stance you're going to have to memorize. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be modeling the whole economy. And we begin, I want to begin with the black color. That's purple. Here's my black one. Okay. we're going to build a supply and demand model,
Good.
but we're going to build it not for just one little part of the economy, but for the whole
I
economy.
like a wiener.
Normally, prices are on the vertical axis, but we don't want to do just one price. We want to do all the prices.
Whoa.
What do we call all the prices?
Nothing?
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah.
The CPI.
So yeah, the CPI is used to estimate what? 'Cause we want to. The CPI is a particular way to estimate it.
A rate.
Index?
A bank.
An average?
Bank.
We talked about it before.
On your head.
Price level.
The price level, right? That's going to be all the prices. The price level.
I don't have green.
No, you have green, isn't that
It
correct?
doesn't work.
Well, I didn't have time to check it before we left. We can use this one though. Even
Even
though it's a whiteboard one, we'll make it work. Price level on our vertical
care.
axis. On our horizontal axis, it's usually what?
Nothing.
On an usual supply and demand graph, it's usually. No, it's not supply, it's, here's with Q,
Demand.
quantity. But we don't want to have just one quantity, we don't have just one kind of thing, we want to have all the quantities.
Whoa.
Yeah! So it's going to be all the quantities. This is a little hard, so I start with price level.
Rough.
Wait, what did you ask me?
So, if we were to do a normal supply and demand graph,
Rough.
we would have price and quantity, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, and we're done, right? But we want to model the whole economy, so we got to get the axes right. Rather than doing price, we're going to do price level. Rather than, because this will be all the prices. Rather than doing quantity, we want to do all the quantities. What do we call that?
Nothing.
Well, you raised your hand.
I was gonna say something like, I don't know, not gross domestic product, but just like total produced goods.
None.
Well, I like where you were going with that, though.
I don't like
Gross
this.
domestic
It looks
product?
weird.
Yeah, like something like total.
Like there's something, there's a way that we can measure all the stuff produced in the economy. Man, like gross domestic product. But it's not. Exactly. We want to do GDP, but we want to adjust for inflation. Remember, real GDP is adjusting for inflation. Real GDP is focused on, okay, how much stuff did you make? Setting aside the price level. And so we're going to put all the quantities here. It's real GDP, which of course is also all the incomes. All right. Great. Now we're going to draw demand, except we don't want to say just one demand. We want to say all the demands for all of this stuff.
Why?
And what does it think it's going to look like? It's going to work down. Downward sloping, I assume you mean. And what are we going to call it? Can't call it demand.
The band. Right?
Yeah?
Velocity of money?
Nope. Can't call it, it's not velocity of money. So we want to combine all demands. What are some words for combining stuff? Aggregate demand, right? All right. Yeah.
Doesn't demand itself kind of imply that it's collective?
It's only been collected for one particular good, right? I can put, this is the market for pianos, right? And this is the quantity for pianos, the price for pianos, the demand for pianos.
Whoa.
But
That's
we
so
want
cool.
aggregate demand in general,
But from what?
for like everything. Because you know, everything's right here,
Whoa,
right?
did
This is
you
why we have
know that?
all the quantities. Because we're modeling the whole economy, we're not just modeling one little part of it. We think big, it's macro, damn it. All right.
Why are you saying that?
Okay, so just like our demand curves of your aggregate demand assumes ceteris paribus and it slopes down. But here's the thing. We cannot claim that aggregate demand slopes down for the same reason demand slopes down. Yeah, it's puzzling. Here the story was if the price falls, people obviously can, buy more. The end, right, slopes down. But it's a little strange to say that when the price level falls, people buy more. Why is that strange? Yeah.
If the price level is falling, it would usually mean that there's less money overall to be spent.
Yeah, remember, like, price level includes incomes, right? Like, it includes, like, wages. It includes wages. And recall that real GDP is also income.
Let's go.
So if prices rise, people would have to
To the macarena.
spend more to afford something that they can't get, also more income. So it seems a little weird, because if price levels are rising, people should get more income. It's a little strange.
Oh, strange.
So we have, though, another justification for why aggregate demand slopes down. We can't think in terms of the price level falling, then people buy more stuff just because things are cheaper. Because if people are earning less as well, it really makes sense. So instead, we're going to introduce something called
Nothing? You call nothing?
the interest rate effect.
Oh. I'm confused.
This is why AD slopes down.
I didn't just say
Okay.
it.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce this notation.
Daddy,
This means implies.
can you help me put these back in?
No, you can do it, honey.
I want to close it.
Oh, it's a little tricky to close. You might just have to put it in your backpack.
What?
Well, you might put it in the small part of the backpack so it doesn't spill out everywhere. That's not the small part, honey. That's the biggest part.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought everything
So-
was also.
Let's imagine the price level goes up.
Whoa.
Now, over time, we would expect wages to go up to compensate that. But as we discussed, if there's inflation, there is going to be some interesting effects when we talk about borrowing, right? So, if the price level is going up, if we're going to borrow something to complete a project, does how much we have to borrow, does that go up or down?
Down. Up.
It goes up. Why?
Up. Up. Eat. Up. Eight.
Like imagine we're trying to we have some big housing complex we're trying to build.
Oh.
And we suddenly get inflation, which means lumber is more expensive,
Yes.
and
This is what I want.
labor is more expensive, and concrete is more expensive,
Oh, weird.
and roofs are more expensive.
Go.
And pipes are more expensive. And everything is more expensive.
This is easy.
We're gonna have to borrow more money? Yes. So,
Do we have to?
this implies
Do you have to do it? Yes, we.
demand
Come on, bro.
for loanable funds go up. We want to borrow more money. And it's not just gonna be us, right? This is the economy-wide thing.
I feel
All
like
prices are going up on average, so lots of different people are going to want to borrow more money.
Yeah.
People who want to buy a house are going to want to borrow more money. People who want to start a business are going to want to borrow more money. There's going to be a massive system-wide increase in the demand for loanable funds. Well, wait. Remember I said that aggregate demand still follows the ceteris paribus assumption. What's that ceteris paribus assumption?
All things equal.
All things being equal, which means the price level went up. Well, we're going to say that the amount of money available hasn't changed. If that's the case, then what's going to happen to the interest rate?
It's gonna also go
It's also going to go up. Why?
up. If there's more demand for loans, then there's more of an opportunity to make money off of it.
Yeah. And if this is more competition, right? We have the same amount of money available. Banks have a certain amount of money they can lend out. And there are more people that say they're asking for bigger checks. And we're like, well, this pressure is going to cause interest rates to go up. And if interest rates go up, some people are going to say, you know what, never mind, I don't want to make this project anymore. Some people will say, I do not want to borrow this money anymore, we're going to hold off on this investment. In other words, fewer things get done. And if fewer things get done, what happens to real GDP? It goes down. Let's do a numeric example to highlight this. Let's imagine that a bank has $12 million in loanable funds. And let's also imagine that
Oh, wait, what?
there are multiple projects that they can fund. Each project costs $2 million. So there's like multiple people coming to them saying, oh, we want to borrow $2 million to do our thing.
Stop it, yeah.
How many projects can they fund?
6.
6.
We'll go with the fire jet. Just think about this.
But what happens though?
That was so weird.
The price level goes up.
Goddamn.
And now each project costs $3 million. Alright, I'm using extreme increases, a 50% increase in price. I'm using extreme increase to illustrate the point. Now you're starting getting applications for $3 million. Oh, we want $3 million. They're doing exactly the same thing they did before. But the problem is all their input costs have gone up. So they have to ask for 50% more money. It's exactly the same project. It's exactly the same size of the housing project. It's exactly the same probability the research will be successful. Whatever it is, everything's the same. It's just that it costs 50% more. How many projects can they fund? 4. In other words,
Yeah,
fewer things get done.
yes.
Fewer things get done. Which of the two projects that don't happen is going to depend on the individuals involved.
I'm gonna do this.
You're going to see the price of borrowing goes up, that's the interest rate. And then all of these different project managers are going to go back and they're going to say, these 6 different teams are like, maybe we should drop out, maybe we should drop out,
that
maybe we
was so
should drop out. We don't know.
What? No one.
If nobody drops out, the interest rate goes up higher. And it's going to keep going up until 2 people drop out.
Let's go.
It's the same thing for when we did the Soviet-style price mechanism. We said, oh, let's get rid of the Soviet system, let's have the price mechanism instead. Lots of people want to get milk. The price of milk is going to go up. Eventually it's going to keep going up until somebody, and we don't know who, but somebody says, that's too expensive. You know what, we think we can do something else. We know what, we don't think we're going to get that much business in the summer. People don't want to eat that much yogurt, whatever it is. We don't know which project is going to fail,
I
or which
forgot
project will be
what
set
was
aside. We just know some projects will be.
Oh,
Well, if we have an increase in price level,
I did not
a
do
reduction
that.
in real GDP, we
I
have a
swear,
downward
that's
sloping
just
curve.
me. That's what I just went. Thank you. Thank you.
If the price level goes up, the other thing goes down.
Yeah, look at
We
this.
good?
I forgot what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Ah!
Let's get you over here.
You literally made me. That is 1,000 coins. You got.
All right, another way to remember this.
Thank you. You made me lose. How dare you? Oh. Thank you.
Is our friend MV equals PLYR.
Oh yeah.
Ceteris paribus means everything else stays the same.
I'm
So if one goes up,
Thank you.
the other one has to go down. Any questions?
Say. I did 1 second.
Okay, that's demand.
Boy. Oh, I missed. Oh, I did it.
Let's get complicated.
Yeah.
You guys are good so far, right? This is pretty boring.
I'm boring. Actually, you're
No, you are not boring, Miles. Let me tell you. You are lots of things you are not boring.
not better than you're boring.
I suppose by comparison.
It's rough. Yeah.
So, this is going to be our ADAS model.
Let's go.
AD, of course, stands for aggregate demand. What do you suppose AS stands for?
Like, so good.
Aggregate supply. But we're going to do something a little wild.
Cut.
We are going to
That's so
take that aggregate supply and we're going to split it in two.
Okay, me. Jump there. Oh,
We are going to have a long run aggregate supply. Which we call LRAS.
no, no,
And we are going to have a short run
no, no.
aggregate supply.
I've only got more left. Then we'll go. I'm gonna
SRAS. So this is one of the things about this model. There's going to be 3 different lines. An AD, an LRAS, and an SRAS.
I did not do that. That's just.
So let's do the LRAS is a bit simpler.
Hey.
So we'll start with the LRAS. Actually, I thought about switching this up. Which one do you want to do first? You want to do LRAS or SRAS?
SRAS.
Miles thinks we want to do SRAS. Want to do SRAS first? Yeah? Okay, he decides. Great.
I already know.
He's like, I don't really know what you got yourself into. That's fine. Gotta do them both anyway.
That was. What?
Okay. SRAS is going to reflect
You just said.
these kind of costs.
Bye bye.
But in order to understand its shape,
Yeah. F plus B.
we have to understand
Yes. Yeah. Oh.
stickiness.
Go. If you up.
Do you remember when we did supply and
I
demand,
want first place.
and I shift a curve and I shift another curve, and you say the quantity changes and the price changes? Now, granted, we see quantities change all the time. We see a bunch of stuff that's at the store, and then people take it away. There's a lot more activity over here, there's less activity over here. Quantity changes all the time, we all see that.
Go.
But do prices change all the time? Like, do you see prices? Prices will have sales and so forth, but do you see like them change with the frequency that you would see the commodity market change or the Dow Jones Industrial Average change? Do you see the no, you don't, right?
That's so
Prices and also wages, and we just say wages. Wages are really just a kind of price or price of labor. They are what we call sticky. They are resistant to change.
Bola, yeah. I need 2 more.
And that occurs For 3 reasons.
I skipped it.
Okay. Let's start. Look. Emily,
No.
let's imagine I start a restaurant. And I'm going to call the restaurant Onions, Onions, Onions. Ooh. And here at Onions, 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 we have blue and onions and French onion soup and liver and onions and onion cake and all kinds of onion themed foods. Onion
you
cake
a
doesn't sell that
onion?
well, but it's going to catch on.
Are you an onion?
And you go down to the restaurant, Emily, to try this out. What's the first thing that you're handed? A menu. And on the menu has all the individual items there with descriptions of how wonderful our caramelized onions are and how beautiful all these these different onion themed dishes are.
Good.
It's really great. And also on that menu, what's printed?
I'm gonna take that out.
Prices. Prices are going to be on the menu.
Ah, I missed babies.
Imagine that my onions get more expensive due to inflation, or just due to the fact that prices are just not necessarily inflation, but it can't be. Or just there was an issue at the onion farm and they had some sort of delivery thing, and just onions are more expensive. Am I going to change the price of my menu items? Knowing full well that it's a temporary event, knowing full well that next week they'll be right back down to what they were, but there was just some sort of temporary delay and prices are more expensive. Why not? Why am I not going to change my prices?
Well,
Oh,
first of all, you'd have to go through the work of changing all the menus.
Change all the menus, right?
to change.
And there's a cost. Granted, if it's a huge change in price, I would probably do that. But if it's like, onions cost a few more pennies a pound. I go through a lot of onions, but for any individual dish, it's like nothing. I am not going to engage in that cost of creating new menus. I'm not going to engage in that cost of changing all my prices everywhere.
Why?
Because it's just too expensive.
Why?
And we call these menu costs.
Why?
We use the term menu cost because this idea of having to print a whole new menu is a very real, obvious manifestation of this cost. But it includes all the logistical costs involved in changing a menu, or changing a cost, or changing a price. Changing a price.
Tower. Go. I'm gonna beat this guy. Up there. Yeah, he looks cool. Isn't that what you look for? Ah, what else on there? Yeah.
This can include things like you have to do research to figure out what the new price should be. You have to, like at the grocery store, you have to have the employees go out and mark all the additional new prices everywhere. You have to deal with the confusion of the computer system, and if the computer system doesn't match the actual thing that's listed there, you have to deal with that. You have to deal with people who are asking, hey, what's the price of this thing because you changed it and maybe it fell off, things don't match. There's all these logistical costs in changing prices. It includes research, it includes actually changing the thing. Granted, those costs are lower in a digital age, but they are still not zero. Good so far?
No.
So when we get these manifestations, people are like, well, these little adjustments, it's like it's not worth incurring that cost to have everything match up. Let's just keep the price the same. There's another reason as well. Emily, you love going onions. You went there, you love it, you go there every single week. And you always get the what? The onion cake. I knew it was going to be it's fantastic. What you gave her. Yeah, you get the onion cake. And you get a slice of cake every single week. And you know what that price is. And then let's say 1 week that price is say 10%.
I know. That's
How do you feel?
I'm not gonna figure out, like, what's the plan. Like, I'm so.
Not really great.
Yeah, it's annoying, right? You might not throw your hands up and say no, but it's annoying. How many of you have had something that you buy over and over again? You know the price, and then suddenly the price has changed. You have an example, Miles. Yes, you just lost your game.
I shouldn't do that.
Can you only think of something where they buy it over and over again?
Yeah.
Gas. Gas is a nice example because you see that price change and you get really annoyed, right? But I think it's
So
something people see
annoying
we
you
get
can
drunk.
change the gas
I had a
line.
Wi-Fi subscription and it went up.
A, B,
Yeah,
C,
and you're like
D,
annoyed,
F,
right?
G,
How much did it go up?
H, I, J, K, L,
It used to
M,
be 19 now.
Q, R.
But I have to
So it went up $2.
Huh?
Which is not that much in the grand scheme of things, but you are annoyed. And all these little things
Yes.
pile up, and they create genuine noise, and they can actually mess with people's budget. If any one thing is small, okay, it's small. But when lots of small things pile up together and it adds up, it's pretty annoying. Consumers don't like that. Consumers like stability. Consumer expectations also make prices sticky.
How do I do that?
It's worth noting that not only does Emily have to worry about stable prices, she likes stable prices,
Oh,
but as the
I
person who runs
jumped.
onions, I like stable prices too. I like to know that the price of my workforce isn't going to change wildly. I like
Excuse
to
me?
know what the price of my onions and other ingredients are going to be, because that allows me to plan. Much like Emily and Jonathan want to be able to plan their budgets.
No, thank you.
All businesses, they're not just sellers, they're also consumers. They're buying their inputs. They care
You
too.
look teach. Be nice. Okay.
Now, I need to get my onions from somewhere. Where do I get my onions from?
The store.
No,
Restaurant supplier.
restaurant supplier, right? We're going to keep it simple. We're just going to say get it directly. It's farm direct at onions, onions, onions. Thank you very much. Francis, let's imagine that you are an onion farmer. And you deliver my onions every day. I use a lot of onions that I use. And then one day, I say, you know, Francis, today I don't want to buy the onions. I found a cheaper price somewhere else. How do you feel about that?
What?
Betrayed. You got a truck
I
full of
will
onions, right? What are you gonna do with these
betray
onions? Yeah, I mean, that's annoying because you got to find there's a transaction cost. You got to find what you're gonna do with it or whatever.
Oh,
Well, there's a flip side of this. What's the flip side of the concern?
excuse me? I landed it upside down. That's so weird. That was weird.
The
Like,
what?
that was weird. I'm scared.
Well, like I find a better price somewhere, but there's another version of a problem. Maybe I don't find a better price.
Yeah.
Maybe
This is easy.
you find the better price, right? Maybe somebody comes to you and says, Francis, I understand you're selling a lot of onions. So, onions. I will buy those onions for 10% more,
Yeah.
right? And you might be willing to do that, right? But then, what about me? I can't have onions without onions. So we recognize that we're mutually dependent on one another, but we want reliability. We can rely on reputation, but that only gets us so far. If only there was something else we could do to make it clearer and stronger. That I would reliably get my delivery of onions, and Francis will reliably have a customer for onions. Contracts. And in every contract, it's going to include things like the time that you'll be delivering these onions by, and the quantity that you'll be delivering the onions, and the kind of onion that will be delivered, and the various quality level of the onions, make sure nothing's brewed. And also it will include in that contract the price. And those prices
Bye.
are locked in.
Bye-bye. Boing. How did he go? How did he get here? You just hang onto my toe. Hi, you can make me look again.
Okay. We're good so far?
No.
Because we actually haven't drawn the SRAS curve. But we're getting there, I promise. I have to do a whole build-up. The thing is, these, all three factors, they matter.
Ha!
But they have slightly different impacts.
Boom.
Between inputs
Bye.
and outputs. What's the difference between an input and an output? Yeah.
It's what you put into the transaction versus what you get out.
Think of a factory, right? The thing, what are the inputs for onions, onions, onions?
Onions.
Onions and labor and
Boom.
Equipment.
equipment. And certainly, right? Those are going to be fixed, but long run, sure. Electricity, other ingredients besides onions. All these things go in. What goes out? What are the outputs? Yeah.
Prepared food.
The what?
Prepared food.
Prepared food.
I had to have
Okay. So with that in mind, it turns out that stickiness has slightly different impact on inputs versus outputs, and this makes all the difference. But we have to go through and we have to recognize it's just a slight difference. For example, do we care about menu costs for outputs? Like, I'm selling you the onion cake. Do I care about menu costs if I change the price of the cake? Yeah, absolutely, it applies. When Francis sends me onions, setting aside the contract issue, does she have to think about if I'm going to change my price? Are there going to be menu costs with that? Are there going to be like logistical costs of changing those prices?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's going to have to do research to figure out how much to change it to,
Bullet.
and then we can,
What the-
and then you open up the possibility of us bargaining. That's a cost as well.
Bye.
It's possible she just might want to say, "Oh, forget it. I'm just going to keep it the way it is." So she's thinking about logistical costs of changing her price, just like I'm thinking about logistical costs of changing my price. So they both apply evenly. What about expectations? Do my customers have expectations of stable prices? Yes. Do
Get
I
up here.
have an expectation of stable prices
That's it.
for my ingredients, for my inputs? Absolutely. Do I have a contract for my inputs?
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I gotta have, so not just for the onions, but also for the labor. I might have a contract there. I might have a contract for the other ingredients I get. I have a contract even for my, for the rent and everything. So that certainly applies. Do my customers have a contract with me?
Don't.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Really? When was the last time you bought something that had a contract attached to it?
Me. Ow.
Oops, you okay?
That was weird. See?
No!
Ah.
There are occasional things that you as consumers encounter contracts with.
Yeah.
If you, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
do some renovation to a house, there will be a contract there. We had a roof replaced not too long ago. There was a contract there. If you are having a wedding and you set aside a venue somewhere, they will have a contract there for caterers and so forth. Like, if we cater
Can I
your
go
wedding,
to
if you have onions, cater your wedding, Emily, which I'm sure you would. We could have a whole onion cake, a whole wedding onion cake, right? Right? There would be a contract there. But the vast majority of things we buy, there's no contract whatsoever. Which means input prices are stickier than output prices. All the prices are sticky. There's always going to be some resistance, but input prices are stickier.
So,
And that's going to be the defining aspect of the short run aggregate supply curve.
oh, yeah.
we good so far? This is a very long way of getting us to the actual shape of the line. Because if the price level goes up, so let's actually do this right here, SRAS. If the price level goes up, well, that's going to imply, let's see, I have some prices that are going to go up. You know, if there's an inflation, eventually I will change my prices. I will make everything more expensive. But guess what? A lot of my costs are going to be locked in by contract.
Right.
So what happens to my profit?
It dies.
My profit? My prices that I'm charging are going up. But my costs are the same. Maybe they're going up a little bit. But a lot of them are locked in. My profit goes up.
Yes. Daddy, I wasn't calling you.
And if my profit goes up, if I'm like, oh my goodness, I can make so much more money now because I'm getting all this business and people are paying hand over fist for these things because, you know, there's been inflation.
So,
But my costs haven't really changed that much. I'm going to produce more. Miles, you can't, what are you doing? Don't, no. If you want to go back to play Minecraft, you can go back to play Minecraft.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Production will go up. We saw this during those early days of inflation when prices were going up and businesses were desperate for workers. Do you remember those days?
Yes.
And they're like, yes, we want to hire, we're having all this production, we're having all this activity, we're super busy.
Yeah.
But note the relationship here, because another way of saying production
Let's go.
is real GDP.
Yeah.
We produce more. And so,
I didn't do that
SRAS slopes up. Do you see what I was saying about how this diagram takes a long time to explain? You were talking to me before, Anthony, about this diagram, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of background to getting SRAS to slope up.
Oh, what? Oh,
But at the end of the day, it's just because import prices are kind of locked in more than output prices. And so when costs start to rise, sure, businesses will pass it on, but the costs will not rise that much compared to how much pressure they're going to get to raise prices. When there are lots of people saying, I will buy this thing because there's inflation, they have more cash because the government put more cash in the system, for example. That's going to cause prices to go up. But this is why you saw companies making record profits during those early years of inflation. And people complain and they said, oh, that's evidence that companies have conspired together to raise prices. As if in the aftermath of the pandemic, companies finally realized that money is good. Never made any sense. They always knew that. But the causation goes the other way. Are we good so far?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
I mean, I shouldn't be relying on Miles saying, yes, everything's fine. Yeah. Now, I haven't done the long run. Long run, though, is faster. I got good news. Long run is faster.
One long so fast.
In fact, we're almost done.
What the?
Okay.
I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. Die.
Well,
Sorry, look at you.
in the long run,
I did not steal this. Please.
in the long run,
No, if I were.
how much do menu costs matter?
You would.
Obviously, they matter a little bit now.
Yes.
But if I'm constantly seeing my onions get more expensive, am I eventually just going to swallow the cost and print new menus? Eventually, yeah. Eventually, because it's a one-time thing. It's a one-time cost, right? In the short run, sure, I'm like annoyed. It might go back down again. I'm not going to constantly change my menus back and forth with every fluctuation. But if it goes up and it's constantly over and over expensive, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to have to increase prices.
Yeah.
That's what we saw that happen in the aftermath of this inflation. where companies were really resistant to raise prices. They didn't want to upset their customers. They didn't want to go through the cost of changing things.
Sure.
But eventually, like, I just have
I
to.
know, I know.
My kids do piano. You're going to start piano this summer. Okay. And the piano teacher contacted me one time, and she was like really sad. She's like, I don't want to do this, but I just have to increase my price. I just have to. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I expected that. I imagine other people were annoyed, given how she was talking to me. But I'm like, no, I promise, this is fully built in.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had inflation. Your cost of living has gone up. I expect you're going to have to charge us more. That's the nature of things.
That's weird.
So eventually these go away. Eventually people have the awkward conversation with their customers. Eventually they do the negotiation. Eventually they print new menus. In the long run, this is not a thing. In the long run, too, you increase prices. People are annoyed now. Will people eventually adapt and deal with it? Absolutely. Absolutely. You might, when you are old, be like, I remember when Starbucks cost us a smaller amount of money than it does now. But generally speaking, people adapt, and this becomes the new standard. Eventually, people get over it. And also, eventually, in every single contract, there's not just the quality and the quantity and the time and the price and location. There's also in every contract what? A duration. Eventually, contracts expire. And they're not locking in prices anymore. And those prices will be renegotiated. In other words, in the long run,
My plan.
no prices are sticky.
Bye. Yeah.
In the long run, prices are completely flexible.
Fine. Take that.
You are not going to grow an economy or shrink an economy based on changing the price level. If you add
Go.
a zero to every price and then add a zero to everyone's salary, so everything's 10 times as much, but everyone gets paid 10 times as much, nothing has changed. So, in the long run, what is the relationship between the price level and real GDP?
I said, who won? You.
Anyone?
Like horizontal.
So if it was horizontal, then say that the price level could be anything. We want to go the other direction.
Aggregate, same as aggregate demand decreasing.
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's not horizontal. It's vertical. No matter what the price level, GDP is the same.
It's waterfall.
No matter what the price level. You make it 10 times as large, nothing has changed. People are not producing more, they're not producing less.
Bounce breast.
How are you doing? If you're like, oh my god, I can't believe, how much time do we have left? 20 minutes? That's basically what I have planned for today, is to just build in the model. It takes a lot of background to get 80 to slope down. It takes even more background to get SRAS to slope up. LRAS is straight up and down. We are going to reaffirm some of this stuff next time when we talk about shifting it, because that's a lot of fun. But in case you're curious, if you want to preview, there's currently a lot of talk on tariffs. Tariffs are going to make it more expensive to produce things. Tariffs are going to shift SRAS to the left. Note what happens when we shift SRAS to the left. What does that represent? A higher price level. Yeah.
Rise in costs,
Rising costs, in other words,
inflation.
inflation. Decline in real GDP, we also had a name for that. Recession. So sometimes people say, oh, how can you possibly get like, because I don't know if you've ever heard the term stagflation before. No. So stagflation represents a stagnant economy with inflation. And we haven't talked about that. The public discourse hasn't been around that lately until recently when someone decided, I'm going to put a lot of tariffs on everything. Who knows that they're a stick because everything's going to change. But I'm like, oh, well, that works with our diagram perfectly, right? SRAS shifts to the left and we have a smaller economy and higher prices. That's likely. Right, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But that's a little preview of what we'll be doing next time, is we'll start manipulating the diagram. And if you didn't quite follow all of the reasoning, hopefully it will be solidified next time. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to get done early. I know, we
Get
have
done early.
yeah, it's like 15 minutes early. So I will see all of you then on Thursday. Sorry, on Thursday. Have a great couple of days, everybody. We'll talk shifting aggregate demand and aggregate supply next time.